When's the last time you looked at a guy who seemed completely untouchable, built a whole political movement around his name, his face, his own brand, and watched the people who built him start walking out the door one by one? That's what's happening right now, and I don't think most people are paying close attention to it because here's what they're not telling you. Donald Trump is not losing liberals, Democrats. He's not losing moderates. He's losing his own people. And this is a very different story than what the mainstream media is painting out right now. Let's start with the numbers. A new NPR PBS Marist poll conducted in mid-June found disapproval of Trump sitting at 59%, tying his all-time high, including 64% of independents, 17% of Republicans, 17% of his own political party. That is a crack in the foundation, and it's getting worse. Trump's approval hit 38.1% in May of 2026, the lowest out of any president in America's history, with independent approval at 34%, which is below the 36% threshold that preceded Democrats' 41-seat wave in 2018. We are in wave territory. His own numbers are telling us that. Now, the White House will come out and say, look at 2024, 80 million people voted for him. And sure, that's true, but elections are snapshots. Approval ratings are a movie. And right now, the movie has a very bad ending. Florida now sits at negative 11 on Trump's net approval, down from plus 9 at the start of his term. Ohio dropped plus 8% to negative 13. Pennsylvania went from negative 3 to negative 15. These aren't blue states turning bluer. These are places that Trump won. These are places that he needs to keep lights on for Republicans running in November, and the power is flickering. But here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not about the economy, though that's a big part of it. Among Republicans specifically, confidence that Trump's policies would decrease inflation has fallen from 76% in December of 2024 to 44% today as I'm talking to you. On handling inflation overall, Republicans dropped 23 points in 1 year. 23 points in his own party. That's insane. That's astronomical. On the issue that he ran on for a year. So the base is wobbling on the economy, but then you add three other things that are breaking this coalition apart at its seams. And this is where the story gets complicated. I don't see many people discussing this. The first crack is MAGA. Remember when Trump bought RFK Jr. and basically said, Bobby, go wild? That was a direct quote. The MAGA crowd, the wellness moms, the raw milk dads, the people who care about what's in their food, their water, and their clothes. They weren't Republicans necessarily. Most of them leaned independent. They were people who saw a window and they walked through it for Trump. One MAGA supporter put it bluntly, quote, I did have to kind of hold my nose because my vote for that ticket was a vote for RFK Jr. And what happened? Trump signed an executive order to increase domestic production of glyphosate, the pesticide MAGA supporters had been fighting to ban. Citing national security concerns, Kennedy gave Trump political cover, and MAGA supporters were furious. As one GOP pollster put it, the GOP rented MAGA in 24, and I think a lot of people in the Republican Party thought, okay, these are our people now. That's not how coalitions work, end quote. That's the whole thing right there. You rented them, you didn't earn them, and now the lease is up. Now, the second crack that has become very polarizing on the right is Israel. Now, Republicans have been the pro-Israel party for decades. Democrats, socialists, and progressive have been distancing themselves from Israel. It was one of the few things that was truly bipartisan, at least in Congress, but reliably red. That's not what the polls are showing anymore. Israel's positive rating among Republicans dropped from 63% to 54% between 2023 and this year. And among independents, positive views of Israel collapsed from 40% down to 21% in the same period. And inside the GOP, the fractures are generational. A Pew Research Center survey found that just 48% of Republicans under the age of 50 have a positive view of Israel, down from 63% in 2022. The younger the Republican, the less certain they are on Israel. And, quote, America First as a foreign policy framework is doing a lot of work here, because it's hard to say America First and then write another blank check to Israel. People notice that tension, and that's why we see Nick Fuentes growing in popularity on the right. The plurality of Republicans now say end U.S. aid to Israel. Notably, 51% of supporters support selling arms to Israel, but that number dropped to 38% when American taxpayers are the ones paying for it. That's the tell. It's not that Republicans hate Israel or the Jews, it's that they're starting to ask, why are we paying for this? And it's actually a very good question. That's a very different Republican Party from the one 10 years ago. In the third crack, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Alex Jones. These are not fringe critics. These are people who made Donald Trump, who built his media ecosystem, who defended him through 2 impeachments, indictments, through literally everything, and they broke hard. The trigger was Iran after Trump threatened to, quote, wipe out an entire civilization on Easter morning. Megyn Kelly said on her podcast that she was sick of this, adding, quote, you don't just threaten to wipe out an entire civilization, end quote. Alex Jones called for Trump's removal through the 25th Amendment, and Carlson called on U.S. military aides to reject plans to kill Iranian civilians. And Tucker Carlson even said that he is no longer a part of the GOP this past week. He said that he hopes they lose in the midterms. Trump, being Trump, responded by going on Truth Social and calling them low IQ losers running third-rate podcasts. He said Carlson should go see a psychiatrist, that was a direct quote, called Owens crazy, and described Jones as saying some of the dumbest things, that was a quote. Carlson, for his part, revealed that he spoke to Trump on February 27th, the day before the Iran war started, and said, I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him. What he did is a catastrophe. He knew it would be, and he did it anyway. Carlson did not stop there. He announced he's officially done with the Republican Party, like I previously said, saying they are not loyal to the United States. Megyn Kelly put it plainly, the coalition that got Trump elected is completely fractured and smitherenless. The question is now not who has Trump lost. The question is who remains, and those are people like the Mark Levins. That's the question sitting at the center of all of this, and the honest answer is the hardest of the hardcore. Among Republicans who identified as favorable to MAGA, 93% still approve of Trump. But among Republicans who don't identify with MAGA, 28% of the party, his approval rating dropped to 30%. So what you're looking at is a party increasingly defined by its own commitment, while everyone else either quietly walks away or openly blows it up and they're on their way out the door. Now, I want to be clear about this because this is what we do here. None of this means Trump is finished. I think it would be stupid politically to say that. He has survived things that would have ended literally anyone else in the political ecosystem. But here's what's true. The share of Republicans who say he keeps his promises describes Trump dropped 14 points since November of 2024. The share who expected ethics and government to improve has fallen from 59% to 37%. That's expectation collapse. That's the thing that's hard to rebuild because people no longer trust that the future will be different than the present. The MAGA voters wanted a healthier country. The non-interventionalists wanted no new wars. The fiscal conservatives wanted spending restraint. And on all three, they got something they did not bargain for. It was literally advertised under false pretenses. That's not a liberal critique. That's their own people tallying their seats. I'm Cameron Rudat. This is Average American. We hold everyone accountable, and right now, that's the Republicans. We'll be back after the short break. All right, quick break, and I want to talk to you about something that actually fits what we're doing today. You know, one of the things that frustrates me most about the current political moment is how loving this country has somehow become a partisan statement. Like you're supposed to pick a side, and then only that side gets to wave the flag. That's not America, that's a bumper sticker. And the people at It's Cool to Love America get that. This isn't a left or a right thing, it's an American thing. It's the idea that you can be proud of this country, believe in what it's supposed to stand for, and still hold it accountable when it falls short. In fact, that's exactly what loving it looks like. They make gear, hats, shirts, accessories that lets you rep that without it being a political statement, just a statement that you give a damn. Head over to itscooltoloveamerica.com and use my code Cameron at checkout to get a discount on your order. Wear it to the polls this November, wear it to your town hall, wear it when you're knocking on doors or just sitting at your kitchen table doing the homework to figure out who deserves your vote. Because it is cool to love America. What isn't cool is sitting on the sidelines while other people decide what it looks like. It's cooltoloveamerica.com, code KAMERON, Cameron, to get 10% off your first order. Okay, so let's go over the numbers. Like I said, the overall approval collapse went uh, to 38% nationally, the lowest of either of his terms and one of the lowest in American history. I think that shows that a lot of his policies, a lot of his actions are either being falsely represented to the American public or people just hate it. Um, Now, for those 80 million people who voted for him this past, not this past November of 2024, that's really low. 17% of Republicans disapprove of what's going on. Independent approval at 34%, below the 2018 number. State by state, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, all flipped negative. Now, that is a big teller because those are all states that he won in the 2024 election. Mainly because of the economy, mainly because he's gone back on every single one of his campaign promises. The inflation trust collapse inside the GOP went from 76% to 44% in a matter of 8 months. That is the largest drop in American history within the Republican Party. And I think it's very telling that people don't like what he does. And that new book, Regime Change, by those two New York Times authors came out this past week. And I've been seeing so many clips. I've read segments of it. I haven't read the book yet. But they said that Trump doesn't trust anything that shades him in a negative light. And they specifically gave one example when they were at the White House because they interviewed people within his administration and himself. But while they were there, he was in a meeting with Steve Witkoff. No, not Steve Witkoff, with Scott Bessent, the finance guy. And he has this intern. I can't remember her name, but she used to work for Breitbart, and now she's in the White House. And Scott Bessent was showing him jobs numbers, and they were low. And he yelled across the room and said, "So-and-so, give me the real numbers." And apparently he was extremely angry when he found out those were the real numbers. They also cited that many of his news intake is mainly Fox News and Newsmax. It's not like the first term where he would go scrolling on X. Now he just watches the news. Those are propaganda arms. They will do nothing but shade him in a good light. And I don't think that's good. I think a lot of people need to start watching the news. I think it's more important for the president to stop watching the news. especially ones that support him. They also said that every now and then he watches MSNBC. We've seen that like on Air Force One, where he's watching MSNBC and he's like screaming at the TV because they aren't too happy about what he's saying. But no matter what the mainstream media says, his approval rating is the lowest, at least for him, 32%. I think that should be a signal to him. I think that just shows how alienating he has become. One of those reasons, as I mentioned in my opening statement, was MAGA. Now, who falls under that is mainly independents, some Democrats who switched to independent, wellness moms, food safety voters, anti-establishment. They're against big pharma, big ag, whatever. They don't want any chemicals in our clothes, in our foods, and in our drinks. And that's what RFK Jr. was running on. He was running on stopping all of that, or at least allowing people to be aware of those things and how they're in our food, in our water, and in our clothes. And he ran as an independent after he was kicked out of the Democratic primary. And he then dropped out of the race. His VP was Nicole Shanahan. He dropped out of the race and he endorsed Trump in exchange for a job within his administration. And Trump said, quote, "Bobby, go wild." The main betrayal lately is the glyphosate executive order. The pesticide MAGA wanted banned because it was causing cancer. And the conservative-leaning Supreme Court just ruled yesterday. I'm filming this on a Friday. Just ruled yesterday on Thursday that people can't sue these pesticide brands for causing cancer anymore, saying that doesn't fall under the law. And RFK Jr. just went out and covered for him publicly and was like, hey, it's a thing for national security. I don't understand what glyphosate has to do with national security. So people are pretty pissed off at RFK right now. And I don't want to create the false pretense that they voted for Trump. They voted for hope that RFK could sway Trump in a certain way to fit these issues. I was watching, I don't know if you've seen her on Instagram. She is all about getting the chemicals out of the clothes. And she highlighted that. None of us voted because Trump was on the ticket. We voted because RFK would be in the administration. And I think Trump took that for granted by signing that executive order. He also didn't understand the weight that MAGA had within his own movement. I saw a clip of Alex Clark, the one who's always at TPUSA. She's big on the MAGA movement. And she was losing it on Trump on her podcast, Culture Apothecary. And I don't know, when Alex Clark is losing it on you, I wouldn't want to be the recipient of that. Like the GOP pollster said, the GOP rented MAGA in 24. That's not how coalitions work. And now the lease is overdue. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully Trump undoes that glyphosate executive order, because I think that's really stupid that we're allowing that. And yeah, but it wasn't just the health crowd feeling burned. There's a foreign policy fault line running right through the heart of the, quote, MAGA base, and it's Israel and the America First contradiction. A lot of the people who voted for Trump because he was, quote, America first, he wasn't going to put foreign nations before us, say, you know, we can't do that while we're actively paying Israel $3 billion to blow up Gaza. You know, Israel was the one reliable bipartisan safe haven, especially for Republicans. But we've seen the Democrats sort of distance themselves from Israel. But the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, owns a lot of the congressmen. I'm pretty sure 554 out of like 560. So it's absolutely insane. Um, but Gaza changed the GOP's view on this, or the GOP's supporters' view on this, not the GOP, mainly because of the death toll, images of starving children, and shifting public conscience. One thing that I keep hearing is about the UN vote. The UN attempted to vote on a ceasefire in Gaza, so the UN would have to enforce the ceasefire. Israel did not show up, and the only country who voted against it, which the way that works in the UN, basically like everyone has to agree on it, is America. The United States of America voted against a ceasefire in Gaza. And I think that also shifts towards the notion of Tucker Carlson's point that the GOP has been infiltrated by a foreign nation, or at least its lobby, and they are acting in the best interests of Americans. And Republican favorability of Israel was from 63% to 54%. I'm going to be saying a lot of numbers in this episode, so I'm just going to prepare you. Republicans under 50 with a positive view of Israel went from 63% to 48%. That's a big jump. 51% support selling arms to Israel. That number dropped to 38% when Israel doesn't pay us back, which is like 90% of the time. And a lot of members of the GOP feel like the America First is an internal contradiction. You can't run on that and then write blank checks to a foreign military. MTG is now calling a fellow Republican out for supporting genocide. That showed a major shift along with Thomas Massie. We saw him running in the Republican primary in Kentucky, and AIPAC spent $11 billion on that primary. It's still the most ever spent in a Republican primary, and it's insane. And younger Republicans are mainly getting their news from TikTok and other social media platforms, and it's the algorithm, it's feeding that shift. It's also showing a lot of what we've been blindsided on by the mainstream media. And for a lot of them, it was the Iran war that was the breaking point, not just on Israel, but the entire no new wars promise that Trump promised while he was running. That's one of his main things. He said there's going to be no new wars. He's going to be a president of peace. But then, a year in, he starts a war that's costing us trillions of dollars every single day, caused one of the main oil flows to be controlled by our adversary. Not good. And nobody felt that broken promise harder or louder than the people who spent years making Trump's case on air. So a lot of people are not happy about that, including Tucker Carlson, Megyn, Kelly, Candace Owens, and Alex Jones. They are staunch supporters of Trump. These aren't some crazy wackos online. They are architects of the MAGA media universe. They gave Trump interviews when no one else would. Tucker, I'm pretty sure, got 1 billion views on a Trump interview in the early days. And for a lot of them, like I was saying, the Iran war was the trigger. Trump threatening to wipe out an entire civilization on Easter morning. That was Tucker Carlson's main point. And I think if any president were to call to wipe out an entire civilization and threaten nuclear war, I think that's grounds for impeachment, right? Here's what Megyn Kelly said. The coalition that got Trump elected is completely fractured. and in smithereens. The question is not who has Trump lost. The question is who remains. And that's those like Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, the crazies that nobody likes. Everyone hates them. Both sides hate them. Tucker Carlson last spoke to Trump on February 27th, the day before the war started, called the war, quote, a catastrophe, says he feels sorry for him, announced he's done with the Republican Party entirely. Candace Owens called the administration, quote, satanic, urged Congress to remove Trump via the 25th Amendment, and so did Alex Jones. Trump's Truth Social meltdown, following all of this critiques from his own side, called them low IQ, nut jobs, third-rate podcasts when they host some of the highest-rated podcasts, the most viewers in the entire world. And said that Alex Jones should see a psychiatrist. Maybe I agree with that one. But these are not third-rate shows. These are the shows that built your entire political career. Megyn Kelly, who's an independent, came out and endorsed you last election, which she had never done ever. But yet you're calling her a low IQ nut job, hosting a third-rate podcast? You didn't think that in 2024 when she was useful to you. Neither did you about Tucker. When the whole Tucker and Nick Fuentes thing was happening, when Tucker interviewed Nick and so many people were calling him out and calling him anti-Semitic because of it, you came out and defended the man, but then when he says, I can no longer support a party that has been clearly infiltrated by a foreign nation, you call him a low IQ nut job that hosts a third-rate podcast? Seriously? It's like the president of the United States has short-term memory loss. Either that or he's a crazy narcissist who only uses people when they're beneficial to him. I'm leaning towards the latter. We've also seen this in D.C. D.C., one of the most liberal cities in all of America, and he's putting up posters of himself, renaming buildings, demolishing the East Wing, and paving over the Rose Garden to make it look like a Mar-a-Lago patio? Seriously? The Rose Garden is supposed to be a rose garden, not a patio. Be so for real right now. Honestly. I'm like... and I'm pretty sure it's going into next week as well. All of the headliners canceled. The only one who stayed was Vanilla Ice, who hasn't been relevant since the 90s. I totally forgot that he even existed. And Trump is calling it the greatest MAGA rally in American history. You are not actively campaigning. You are supposed to be running our country. So why are you holding rallies? And then I saw him in Pennsylvania the other day on the news where he's like, we have the greatest economy ever when gas is almost $6. When are we going to stop with the narcissism, bro? I can't handle it anymore. I can't. That is why I quit NHSC. That's why I'm not taking other contributor deals. Believe me, I got an offer the other day and I declined it. As someone who was MAGA, came out and said, you know, I can no longer support this man after he portrayed himself as Jesus, and then started crapping on the press. The press are the people who are supposed to hold you accountable, and once we breach that relationship, the American people lose control. So I don't I don't get the narcissism, the outright lying in front of our faces. I'm sick of it. So many other people are sick of it. That is why the Republicans deserve to lose the midterms. That is why I am not voting for Brian Mast, who says, uh, there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian, and believes that we should blow them all up just because they're occupying Gaza. Because they've lived there for centuries. It's not okay for a foreign nation just to redefine their borders whenever they feel like it. And sure, October 7th was a horrible thing, but that's no excuse to kill at least 75,000 innocent civilians, target schools, target hospitals, etc. I wrote an article about this. It's on our Substack. I'll put the link in the description. It is ridiculous. But no, Israel will go, woe is me. Why does everyone hate us? Why are people trying to remove us from NATO and the UN? We need to bring, instead of common sense, remember when Trump was like, we need to bring back common sense. We need to bring back self-knowledge, self-interpretation, self-awareness, mainly, and realize that you are a piece of crap. Okay, that's all for our show today, this week. We'll catch you next week. I forget who I'm gonna be interviewing. My mind's drawing a blank here. But Average American is a Average American News production. Tune in next week. Go read our Substack. Follow me on all social media. And subscribe and like if you haven't